Hey everyone, welcome back to Kubrick Corner with me, Sean Wilson. You might be aware that a so-called Merc with a Mouth is back this week in Deadpool 2, the sequel to 2016's runaway hit Deadpool, which really was a movie that revitalised what comic book movies can do, both sort of tonally and also financially as well. If you cast your mind back to 2016, Deadpool was really the chance for Ryan Reynolds to put a stamp on the character that he attempted to do back in 2009's X-Men Origins Wolverine, except as we know that didn't work out very well at all. Fan interest then ultimately led to the release of the solo Deadpool movie, and it turned out to be an enormous success. I believe the biggest R-rated success in America of all time. And this actually forms the basis of a very funny joke in Deadpool 2, and it really showed studios that you can actually release experimental, daring, adult-themed superhero movies in the February-March window. In 2017, we then got Logan, which was released in broadly the same window. So the success of Deadpool, of course, means that we've now got a sequel, because that's the way that these things go. And I was lucky enough to see this film a week ago and to also interview actors Josh Brolin and Zazie Beetz. So I'll link to those interviews on this video here. They were both absolutely brilliant. But now I'm here to talk about the film itself. So we pick up after the events of the first one, in which you'll remember that Reynolds' character Wade Wilson was a mercenary who underwent experimental treatment for cancer that went horribly wrong, and he ended up turning into this mutated, sort of invulnerable superhero whose sort of acidic wit is as dangerous as his weaponry and his fighting abilities. And we now pick up with his character in the sequel. As you would expect, there's a lot of sort of crude jokes. The violence has been upped considerably. There's more fourth wall breaking and everything. I can't really describe the particulars of the plot because the movie actually throws a lot of surprises at you right from the very start, none of which have been hinted at in the trailers. And I think whoever does the marketing for Deadpool does a brilliant job, not only in terms of that, but also because of the sheer perverse way they are actually able to advertise Deadpool without advertising Deadpool, if you know what I mean. We've had, for example, the Celine Dion Ashes video, which seemed to come out of nowhere, and the combination of Celine Dion and Deadpool, seems to be the most unlikely fit, and yet somehow when you watch it, it becomes hilarious and it makes you want to watch the movie even more. Whoever does the marketing, the publicity for these films is done a really, really superb job, but they've also done a really, really good job of keeping the surprises out of the trailer. And out of respect, I don't want to give away any of those surprises either, because I was taken aback by a few things in this film. But I will say that broadly speaking, you've got Deadpool is back. You have Cable, who is the time-travelling cyborg mercenary played by Josh Brolin, who I have to say is hilarious in real life. Having interviewed him, he's really, really funny. They are on a collision course because there is this pyromaniac mutant kid called Russell, played by Julian Dennison from Hunt for the Wilder People, who incidentally I've also interviewed and who was also really, really funny. You also have the formation of the X-Force team, chief among whom is Domino, played by Zazie Beetz. So you've got all these characters basically all flying around each other, but it's pretty much the Deadpool formula that you expect, except this time it's directed by David Leitch, because Tim Miller, who directed the first movie, departed this film over alleged creative disputes with Ryan Reynolds. And I think that is kind of the key here to this particular movie. Now, I've got to be completely honest that I didn't love the first Deadpool like a lot of people did. I thought it worked in fits and starts, and there were a lot of very, very funny jokes. I must admit, I did go back and see the film again for the second time just recently to see if I'd maybe missed the trick the first time around. And I think my reservation is still standing that it's sporadically funny, but I think the character, the glibness of the character actually wore itself thin for me quite quickly, and it did. I don't think the movie was as subversive as it thought it was. I mean, it threw out a lot of references about apparently tearing up the superhero rule book, but if you look at the template of Deadpool as a narrative, it pretty much follows all those rules. I mean, it is an origin story. You get the big final fight at the end of it. It does follow the conventional narrative. It just throws out more snarky jokes about apparently not doing that. So I don't think Deadpool was quite as smart as it thought it was. But it is an enjoyable movie, and I think Ryan Reynolds is very, very funny as the character. So now, crucially, as I mentioned, Tim Miller's comic sensibility, or sort of more loose, sort of light limber sensibility, has now been replaced by the somewhat more crushing, pounding sensibility of David Leitch, who co-directed the first John Wick and who also directed Atomic Blonde. And I kind of think that's the touchstone here, in that David Leitch is clearly more confident at handling the action parts of the movie. And believe me, there's a lot more action in this one than there is in the first one. But I kind of think that what the sequel struggles with is how does it reconcile these incredibly pounding, noisy, violent action sequences against the jokes. And I personally, I don't think it quite pulls it off. I also think there's kind of a weird thing going on in this sequel, which is there is much more of an attempt to create a sense of dramatic investment and stakes in Deadpool's journey. I think to some extent there was that did happen in the first movie, but the first movie really made no bones about the fact that it was one great big joke. And although, despite my problems about it being shallow, at least it was consistently shallow. At least it was confident in its own abilities. This one, I don't think quite knows how to pitch itself. Does it want to dramatically engage you with a character who is constantly telling you, essentially, not to be dramatically engaged, who is constantly telling you that it's one big joke? Or do you just basically laugh and occasionally wince at what's going on? And I think there is this kind of tonal mismatch in terms of what's happening. And in terms of how it wants you to react to the central character. So I think narratively and thematically and textually, it is a mess. I think there are individual sequences that work very, very well in it. Again, I can't really give anything else away. There is one particular bit in it which is set up with a great deal of fanfare, which then doesn't play out in the way that you expect it to. That almost made me wet myself with laughter. If there had been more stuff like that, genuinely quite audacious, kind of like, wow, I didn't see that coming sort of moments, I think I would have liked this movie a lot more than I did. As it stands, those kinds of moments, I think they're a bit too spotty and a bit too inconsistent. I do think Ryan Reynolds' commitment and obvious affection for this character is really, really great. And it's Josh Brolin himself said to me that it's all really down to Ryan Reynolds that these films exist, although one could also say really it's ultimately down to the fans that the first Deadpool was made. I think Josh Brolin himself plays off well against Ryan Reynolds as basically this grumpier Terminator character who's got all this weaponry and this incredible superhuman strength. Although it's frustrating that I don't really think that he gets enough scenes with Ryan Reynolds, because the idea is that the goofiness of Deadpool plays off against this absolute stoicism of Cable, and I would have wanted more of that in the film. One can only hope that we're going to get a third movie in which that happens, although Ryan Reynolds has said, although this might have been a tongue-in-cheek comment, that we might not necessarily get a third Deadpool movie. But I personally think we'll have to wait and see what the financial results are of this one. I think if it's successful, I reckon we will get another one. In spite of this is all ongoing with Disney now having bought out Fox, which basically means that Disney will be now owning Deadpool, which is quite a bit strange scenario when you think about it. So yeah, I think it's a mixed bag. I've no doubt that it's going to take absolutely loads of money and that the fans are going to go absolutely gaga for it. I think if you were on the fence about the first Deadpool, I don't necessarily think this is going to win you over. For me, I thought there were flashes of brilliance in it. I have to say I ended up coming out the other side of this one feeling more bludgeoned than exhilarated, I want to be honest. But nevertheless, I will share my interviews with the creatives, and I would love to know what you think of Deadpool 2. So drop me a comment here at Kubrick Corner, and I'll see you soon. Ta-ra.